The more interesting thing for me is to be able to split test those statements and drive up my opt-in rate.
It's critical to the solution that you pick, Simon. You've spent, your marketing team, I know, spend a lot of money segmenting out different profile types of your existing customers. They have very well established, mature and sophisticated communication techniques through certain channels to each of those demographics, and with certain messaging types, i.e. either much more detail or snappy messages, whatever gets that segment group that you're pushing your product to at that moment.
Well, we do different messaging by time of day, all of that sort of thing. Yeah.
Brilliant. And absolutely everything that we'd encourage. Asking for consent or asking for a preference is no different. You will find that if you communicate to the audience or the segment of your audience that you're reaching out to through the right channel, the channel that they appreciate and have given you consent for, or you're communicating through another legal basis, and you communicate with a message that resonates with that type of segmentation of your database, then you'll drive a better opt-in rate.
And reassurance, I'd imagine,
And reassurance.
Yeah.
So creating statements, adding new statements, testing statements is so easy within this Cassie solution. And it has to be for exactly that purpose. You're going to need to continually evolve your statement list, building up new statements, testing new statements. And we can pull some of that information from the dashboard, but what I want to do is just actually navigate in here and show you how actually easy it is and intuitive it is to interact with this. You'll see I've clicked on the quickfire navigation pane down the left-hand side. You'll see I've clicked statements. It's expanded and it's brought up 3 subcategories: statements, statement groups, and statement translations. Well, we'll go into them in a bit more detail, but statements allows me to load the statements in. Statements groups allows me to group them into an order that I'm going to present them to you, so it matches up with your product journey. And the translations just allows us to translate into different languages around the world.
Yeah.
Let's go into statements. Usually when we click on the preference center on the quickfire navigation pane, it then brings you up, first of all, the initial list of whatever we've clicked on, and it's no different here. We've clicked up the full list of statements where we can add, edit and manage all of the statements that are contained within the system. You'll see the full long list here that we have.
I'd imagine the beauty of this, though, is it's serving the exact same preferences to every single channel through the API. Is that right?
Okay, so it depends on how it is being asked to interact with that individual. So it would be using the API if we are updating preferences in Salesforce, let's say, for instance. It would be using the widget API if the customer's interacting with it from your current online digital journey. So they're on your web page and they've clicked the form that says, how can we help? And we have a widget sat in there in the background. But we'll come back to that at a later point. Good question. Let's come back to it. For me here, the key part of this is actually putting those statements into the system and being able to test those statements against each other, to be able to identify banker statements, to be able to reach out to different customers with. Here we have the option to add that new statement. We select the channel that we're going to attribute that statement to. Remember, we built up an app earlier on, and we built up some new vehicle sales against that app, so let's stick with that. That's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be dealing with those salespeople out on the forecourts who are there on the front line dealing with a customer with the iPad in their hand. Yeah. Those people are going to have a statement given to them, and generally that consent gathering statement's going to come from somewhere at head office. It's going to be something that's been agreed legally, works for you and protects you as a business, but actually it's something that your salesperson can deliver on the ground. So it's going to be quite snappy, it's going to be punctual, it's going to contain transparency of choice.
Yeah.
We then, within the system, have to tell it whether this is something we require an opt-in for, so a consent gathering question, or whether it's something we're going to pre-tick and actually have as an opt-out. Because remember, GDPR isn't just about consent. There are a number of different legal bases you can communicate to somebody. legitimate interest, fulfilment of a contract or service. And in those particular instances, you'd want it to be checked by default to uncheck. But in this case, this is a consent gathering question. We're asking for consent and we're going to leave that in there. Now, remember, what we're talking about here is we're taking that app channel. So this is about providing consent to that app channel. We can take this and we can add this statement into the different channels, but that's where we have to define that logic.
Are you typically finding people, though, are in this type of scenario blindly accepting, ticking, saying...
I think we found a huge reduction in the number of positive opt-in consents provided as it has been mitigated under GDPR, under the law, to actually have either those boxes pre-populated in a consent gathering question or to tie in the consent to a service or a benefit of that particular website. And that's what we found pre-GDPR. It's taking a little bit of time to be able to settle down and pull the right level of information and data, but what we found is we found a huge drop-off, obviously, in the amount of actual consent that's being given. What we've spent a lot of time doing is looking at our customers' solutions and looking at the particular statements they've used, the times that they've reached out with that for that information and the channels that they've used. And we've let the data and analytics from within the system be able to then be analysed and interpreted to find what's the best time to communicate through what channel and with the what statement. And with the data, we can then prove the return on investment or the improved conversion figures against that particular campaign. And if you remember rightly, right back at the beginning, within the dashboard, we can even now track campaign codes in here as well. So we can look in a live environment, so in a live time, what campaign's gone out, what statements were being used on that campaign, which profile did it go out against in that campaign, did we get the positive opt-in or not, did we get the unsubscribe? We can start to take all of that data to drive our opt-in rates.